Welcome to Sincerely Bhakti. My name is Bhakti Lata, and today I am joined by a very special guest. His name is Ganesham Prabhu, and he gives classes on the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam within the Alachua community, as well as the Gainesville community. He is a hospice chaplain in the Gainesville, Alachua County area, and he is also my wonderful husband. So I'm very grateful that he is joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm grateful to be here.
So today's episode of Sincerely Bhakti, we are exploring how surrender is a coming home. We are reading from Bhagavad Gita as it is, with commentary by Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, reading chapter 7, verse 14. This divine energy of mine, consisting of the three modes of material nature, is difficult to overcome, but those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. So Srila Prabhupada in his purport breaks down this verse into three sections, pinpointing each component of the verse. And so this verse opens up by describing the divine energy of God and these three modes of material nature. It's material, and at the same time, it's defined as divine in this verse because it is an emanation from God. He is the supreme magician. It's just that word is used in Svetashvatara Upanishad, that the Lord is orchestrating everything. And so its connection to the divine energy is what makes it divine, actually, the material energy. So he describes that material energy in the first paragraph. And then the second paragraph, he is describing how you can actually overcome such an impossible nature, and then how it can be easily crossed, this ocean of material nature. So that first paragraph is describing just how impossible this material nature is to really overcome. And these three modes of material nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance, they're like ropes that bind us to this world, and they're so heavy. I mean, even if I think I'm in the mode of goodness and I'm doing well and I have a nice routine and I'm eating nicely, taking nice walks and exercising, all of those things in the mode of goodness, it is still binding me. And it's in a flash, I can switch down to other modes, like the mode of passion, the mode of ignorance. It's so fast. So this material nature is just constantly covering us. And though our soul is eternal and spiritual, it's covered over by the material nature. So Prabhupada is outlining our predicament, that we are eternally conditioned, Nitya Baddha, and there is just simply no way to get beyond this world. And when I read this paragraph, I felt a little flash of hopelessness. This is basically impossible.
Yeah, in a sense, the hopelessness is good because it allows us to really see the situation we're in and to cry out for the Lord's mercy. That's what surrender means. So this is like the key word of this verse, but also some of the culminating verses of the Bhagavad Gita comes back to this point of the path for us is to surrender to God. And sometimes bhakti is called avaroha panta, the path that the descending path, something coming from above down to you. So really, the consciousness is one of receptivity, not just descending knowledge, but also descending love, descending spiritual energy. God Himself descends down into awakens into the heart of the living being. So all we can do is surrender. So even though we're asked to do many active things on the spiritual path, we should hear, we should chant, we should serve, do service. But really, in all those active endeavors, the spirit is one of receptivity, surrender, because I can't produce bhakti. I can't, create God within my heart. I can't just tell God to manifest when I chant His name. I just do it in a spirit of surrender, and when by His supreme will, then He enters into all of those things, and then one can experience the reality of God and His transcendental nature, His transcendental energy. So really, this point of surrender is the key element on the path of bhakti that's here in this verse. The previous verse, right before this one, Krishna says, this whole world does not know me because they're covered by the modes of material nature. So Krishna knows everybody, but nobody knows Krishna until he reveals himself when we have this spirit of surrender to him, when we surrender fully. And it's not just a one-time thing. I mean, if it can be a one-time thing if it's understood very deeply, but for most of us, it's a process of surrender again and again in different moments in our lives. But that spirit of surrender is what opens the heart to be receptive to Krishna's grace coming in so many ways.
And when you say that word surrender, sometimes what comes to mind is this white flag that you wave when you're fighting a war and you have to surrender to the battle because there's no other choice. Basically, there's a sense of being forced into it. Like I have nothing left, so okay, fine. It's a little bit resentful. Like, fine, here's the white flag, let me surrender. But what you described was so beautiful. It was this mood of, let me open my heart, let me be receptive, let me receive love. And it's not about all the actions that I'm performing. And it's actually about, let me let go. And while still being active, not being attached to what happens and what are the results of those actions. And ultimately, even when you were speaking, what came to mind was how Krishna is a person. And Srila Prabhupada emphasizes that here in this verse, that if you are bound up by this material nature, you cannot be freed by someone else who is also bound. You need to take shelter of someone or go to someone who is beyond this jail, this prison of the material world, someone who is free, who can then free me. And so Prabhupada is saying you need to go to either God or his representative. And it's very beautiful that we have this Gita. We can carry it around in our purse or maybe our pocket, if it's a big pocket. And that is always accessible, that someone is there guiding us, a spiritual teacher, a spiritual master, and ultimately God's energy flowing through the spiritual master. We can access that divine energy of liberating us. And ultimately, a person who knows us and loves us, because just surrendering to an idea or surrendering to a thing is not what the soul is longing for, searching for. Soul is longing for that reciprocation.
Yeah, so spiritual life becomes it can be very abstract unless we start to see the need for relationships with persons. You know, if it's just ideas or principles and we're trying to put them into our minds and apply them and things like that, that's part of it. But when you really see, well, it's dependent on my relationship with this person, a spiritual teacher, some spiritual teachers give initiation, some are just giving knowledge and instructions and guidance. And we can have many teachers like this in our life. But the real purification is the dynamics of that relationship. Like it's not just, you know, it's kind of to surrender to an idea or some abstract idea of God. You know, who knows? What's the response? Is there a response from a person? Or maybe I surrender, but it's shown to me later that it wasn't in the right spirit or the right mood. A person can feel that and can exchange and clarify things and correct things. And so spiritual life, we know the real test in life is relationships. Like that's where the real purification takes place. So it makes sense that on the spiritual path, it's going to be filled with persons. And it's not about just transmitting some idea, but it's also how are you relating. There's etiquette, there's mood, there's a service attitude, there's reciprocation. You know, all these things are what really bring the soul, help the soul to emerge from our hearts.
Yes, and those relationships is where that surrender comes in. That anybody who has any meaningful relationship in this life knows that surrender is integral to that relationship.
Mm,
As husband and wife, and we have a baby boy, a son,
mm,
we need to even surrender to him. We're constantly called to surrender in that relationship. And Srila Prabhupada describes so beautifully in this purport that the Lord can release out of his causeless mercy and out of his paternal affection for the living entity who is originally a beloved son of the Lord. And that phrase just struck me so much. It resonated on a very deep level
mm,
that the Lord has paternal affection because he has this relationship with all of us as our loving father. He has this paternal affection for the living entity. And he is a beloved son, like beloved, not just a son, but beloved. And that even this, if the son goes away or is not present or even does something that might be offensive to the father is much bigger than any kind of offense that the son could
Mm.
commit. And the father is powerful and loving and grand and forgiving. And that relationship with God is what we're looking for. And that surrendering to a father like that is not about waving a white flag.
mm. Yeah, there's a story in the Bible of the prodigal son. Um, and it's a beautiful story because it just perfectly aligned with what you're sharing about the father's love and how magnanimous it is no matter what the son does. So as that story goes, the son desires to live his own life and go off and do his own thing, even though he was with the father. He also had a brother that stayed with the father. But one of so two brothers and a father, one of the brothers goes off and just wants to experience life and do his own thing. And even though his father was wealthy and sheltering him in so many ways, he had to gain some of his own experience. And he went out and he found himself in a very degraded situation. And he was working hard to try to even uh, to be able to eat.
Mm.
And then suddenly it came into his mind that my father has all of these things. What am I doing? Why did I leave my father? And he was concerned with returning to his father because he thought he was offensive and he had left on his own. But the beautiful thing about that story is that the father, the whole time he was gone, was just longing and waiting and hoping to see him again. So even though he returned back to his father, he realized, why am I living this way when I can be with my loving father? On his way back to see his father, you can imagine maybe there were some doubts or some fears of approaching him, or maybe he's going to be angry at me or punish me in some way. But the father, seeing him from a distance, seeing his son return, just lit up, and he's gathered all the people together. Let's have a celebration. My son is returning. He was dead, but now he's coming back to life.
Mm.
He was lost, but now he's found. And they had a big celebration and welcomed him with love. And this melted the heart of the son. In fact, the son, he had a very repentant mood. So when he thought to tell his father, well, I have offended my father, so he doesn't need to treat me it doesn't need to be a father-son relationship anymore. I'll just ask to be one of his servants.
Mm.
Yeah, he just wanted to be like a hired servant
Mm.
because I offended my father. So this dynamic of father-son I've I've ruined it. So better I'll just ask to be a hired servant. So that's what he was going to tell his father. But his father would have nothing of it. You are always my son.
Mm.
And so rather than just a master servant, it was a loving father, loving son eternally.
You can see in that story, surrender
Mm.
was the son recognizing, I cannot do this on my own. Trying to overcome this poverty and being on my own is impossible and frankly useless. There's no point to it. Let me just go take shelter of someone who has all the wealth that I could ever need and somebody who loves me and cares for me. And that was this surrender, and within it, embedded within it, is a humility.
Mm.
Okay, I can't do this on my own. I need some help.
Mm.
And that is that surrender. And when you were describing the son coming home, even the father seeing him from a distance, he wanted to have a celebration.
Mm.
He's welcoming him in with love. How is that a white flag? This is not the white flag of fighting a battle and then you're surrendering. Like, that is so beautiful. That image and that experience of coming home, that when it's coming home and deciding this is what I want. And also the son's mood that let me just be a servant. I'm repentant.
Mm.
That is also surrender. So it's not some big showy external thing, and yes, waving this white flag that it's resentful or resigned or bitter. It is such a mood of humility, there's like a reconciliation within the heart and the soul, like a peace that overcomes the heart when there's true humility that descends. And with that humility, is opening up the heart, receiving all of the love and the celebration of the father who has so much paternal affection for the beloved son, beloved daughter, if that resonates, beloved son or beloved daughter, when you're coming home.
Mm.
That is what surrender means, is that you're just coming home and recognizing I need to go home and be home, and that making it on my own isn't going to work.
Yeah, and this is again one of the final teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna tells Arjuna so many different things, so many different paths, so many different dharmas, so many duties, so many messages are there, and then finally it culminates with almost like again with the father son, but Arjuna, if you just surrender unto me completely, I'll take care of everything. So in spiritual life, we have so many things to do, and there are so many teachings and instructions, but if we can really enter into this deep spirit of surrender, Krishna takes care of us. And we might think, well, I don't want to put that burden on Krishna, but he likes to do it, just like a father likes to take care, or a father likes to take care of the young son who's dependent. So it's not a burden for Krishna. He feels just great. I get to do more and give more and take care of you completely. Just surrender and I'll do everything. This is the final teaching of the Gita, and this is what opens up everything in the return of our spiritual natures and our relationship with God.
Yes, and I wanted to add one last thing on this point, that if you just surrender, Krishna will take care of everything. And you could ask, well, why do I have to have that as a condition, that I need to surrender before God would step in and take care of me? And my own realization comes from taking care of my son, who's about 1 year old, and that if he's resisting me trying to help him, it just makes things really hard, as babies tend to do, resist you trying to take care of their basic needs, like feed them or put a diaper on. It's like so challenging. And if he's just in a mood of surrender, okay, mom, I'll open my mouth, you can feed me. Okay, mom, I'll let you just put on my diaper. Then it's like, okay, you surrendered. Now I can take care of you. But if there's a resistance, then it's so hard. And so my sense is that Krishna is not opposed. He's always taking care of us, actually, even when we're not surrendered. Just like I'm always taking care of my son, even when he's not surrendered, or like even when he's not cooperative with my plan. I'm always looking out for him, always taking care of him. It just allows him to receive whatever I'm doing and how I'm caring for him when he is receptive and surrendered and cooperative with what we're doing and how we're doing things. And so it's not so much like, oh, I'll only take care of you if you surrender to me. Krishna's always taking care of us. It's just like, I can actually actively be a part of your life and actually care for you more actively when you are surrendered in that mood of receiving.
Yeah, and it's the nature of the soul to be surrendered in that way too. So it's actually who the soul is, just like the baby. I mean, the baby, it's like the nature of the baby is that they're dependent on the mother, on the father. That's the nature. So long they're a baby, that's what it is. But you can imagine if a baby can mature or have some realization or understanding that I'm always dependent anyway, but actually let me just let go and let this be. Let me accept my nature of being dependent and just surrender. And then you see then the baby becomes joyful, the parents become joyful. So it's also
Mm.
the nature of the soul.
Mm.
Krishna is the controller of everything. He's
Mm.
providing everything for everybody.
Mm.
And it's the nature of each individual soul to just surrender to that reality. I'm not God. There is a God.
Mm.
I surrender.
Mm.
That's the whole story. That's the
Mm.
whole story of what we're meant to learn in this life.
Mm. So thank you so much, Ganesham Prabhu, for joining me and joining us today. And as we reflect upon how surrender is truly a coming home.
Mm.
Thank you. Thank you. Hare Krishna, and I hope you join us next time. Hare Krishna.